Billionaire changed the baby's name to Mistress's ex-pregnant wife, revealed the DNA truth on live TV. In the glitzy halls of opulence where every whim is just a signature away, few tales blaze with scandal and heartbreak the way Jonathan Harrington's does. The tabloids call him the charismatic millionaire who had it all until a shocking secret shattered his marriage. Rumors swirled. He renamed his unborn child after another man, driving his pregnant wife Rachel to reveal a forbidden truth on live television. In an era where money can buy silence, one woman fought back to protect her child, her dignity and her future. Prepare for a heart-stopping journey into betrayal, obsession, and revelations that forever changed 3 lives. Jonathan Harrington was not just another wealthy man flaunting his assets. He was, by many accounts, the embodiment of success. Born into modest means in a small Massachusetts town, Jonathan spent his early years poring over the few books in his parents' humble collection. He developed a voracious appetite for knowledge and an unrelenting drive to escape the confines of his impoverished upbringing. By 25, he'd launched Harrington Tech Innovations, which swiftly soared to prominence after a groundbreaking software acquisition. His ascent from obscurity to billionaire status seemed swift, but Jonathan knew it was the result of endless nights, rejections, and risk-taking. He lived for the thrill of empire building. When mainstream media hailed him as the Northeast's golden boy, he only grinned. Fame brought him access. He attended the same philanthropic galas as Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, networked with Fortune 500 CEOs, and was featured in prestigious magazines. To the public, Jonathan was unstoppable. His face adorned the covers of business publications alongside headlines like "The Young Titan Reinventing Tech." Despite this starry persona, he was never a boisterous show-off. He chose tailored suits over flashy sports cars and donated large sums to children's charities that mirrored his own background. Yet, somewhere behind the polished facade, shadows loomed, whispers of a man whose personal ambitions eclipsed his loyalty to those he claimed to love. Rachel Moore, later Rachel Harrington, was the unexpected factor in Jonathan's carefully constructed life. She was also from Massachusetts, though her upbringing was firmly rooted in the middle class. A marketing professional with her own set of ambitions, Rachel first encountered Jonathan while coordinating a fundraiser event. She'd been tasked with managing sponsor outreach and had reached out to Harrington Tech Innovations for a donation. The moment Jonathan stepped off his private helicopter at the event venue, Rachel couldn't ignore the pull of curiosity, and neither could he. Their romance was a whirlwind of candlelit dinners, stolen weekend getaways, and charitable galas attended arm in arm. For a brief period, media outlets were enthralled by the perfect couple, a pair that seemed to embody modern romance and philanthropic passions. Jonathan's devotion was real, at least at first. He admired Rachel's sincerity and independence. She adored his magnetic confidence. They appeared star-crossed. If only the fairy tale had ended there. From the moment Rachel began working with Jonathan, the shift from casual professional acquaintance to blossoming romance was startlingly quick. She found herself enraptured not by the size of his bank account, but by his agile mind and the subtle kindness he showed to strangers. Once, on a crisp autumn morning, he noticed one of the event staff trembling without a coat. Without hesitation, Jonathan peeled off his own cashmere trench and draped it around the shivering man's shoulders. It was an unscripted glimpse into the kindness that Rachel would later call the real Jonathan. Their first official date was a modest affair dinner in a cozy Boston bistro that specialized in fresh seafood. Jonathan insisted they share everything family style, from the lobster bisque to the crusty bread. They talked for hours about their childhoods, their ambitions, and the improbable alignments that brought them together. Rachel was struck by how fervently Jonathan believed in giving back. He spoke with the fervor of an evangelist about wanting to create educational programs for underprivileged students. Rachel, who had once volunteered as a reading tutor, felt something in her chest tighten with excitement. Over subsequent weeks, as their attachment grew, so did the public's interest in the Harrington heir apparent. Paparazzi occasionally trailed them through the winding streets of Boston's historic districts, capturing every shared glance or laugh. Despite the public scrutiny, Rachel remained impressively grounded. She continued her marketing job while Jonathan jetted from city to city, finalizing deals. At times, she found his globe-trotting schedule daunting, but she never questioned his devotion. Nearly 6 months into their relationship, Jonathan made a grand gesture that would become a story repeated across tabloids. He surprised Rachel with an extravagant trip to Paris for her birthday, complete with a private tour of the Louvre and a midnight visit to the Eiffel Tower. Photographers captured their moonlit kisses beneath the shimmering lights. The internet was set aflame with envy and admiration. In those images, the power couple looked both glamorous and in love modern royalty, with hearts of gold. Within a year of dating, Jonathan proposed on a secluded beach in Cape Cod, using the sea breeze and waves as an orchestral backdrop for his heartfelt speech. A simple diamond ring a token, though it still cost more than most houses, sealed the promise. Rachel said yes with tears streaming down her cheeks. Their wedding, held on the Harrington family estate the following summer, was a mesmerizing event with 500 guests. Influential figures and a spattering of Hollywood celebrities witnessed the vow exchange beneath a canopy of roses. In the immediate aftermath, Rachel and Jonathan seemed to embody every cliché of marital bliss. They honeymooned in Santorini, where azure skies met endless ocean horizons. Intimate evenings of laughter and lingering glances filled their nights. They talked about having children, just 1 or 2. They agreed, enough to share their love without overshadowing it. Rachel carried a private, glowing excitement about the possibility of motherhood. Jonathan's eyes lit up at the thought of a child who would inherit the legacy he was building. But cracks began forming when their idyllic union confronted the colossal demands of Jonathan's business empire. As Harrington Tech Innovations expanded, Jonathan's priorities shifted. Late-night dinners at home morphed into dinners with investors in Dubai, Frankfurt, and Hong Kong. Rachel went from being the center of his life to a supportive actress on the periphery. Love letters and spontaneous flights to romantic destinations gave way to delayed text messages and stiff phone calls. Rachel found herself alone in their palatial home more often than she cared to admit. Behind the shimmering veneer, she started feeling something sinister, doubt. Rachel's suspicion of Jonathan's changing behavior began subtly. First, it was the repeated business trips that extended from days into weeks. Then came the hush-hush phone calls. He insisted he had to take in another room. Even the staff at their Boston penthouse, accustomed to his occasional secrecy, sensed a heightened tension. The once affable boss began snapping at minor inconveniences and spending more time out of the country than in it. At first, Rachel tried to console herself with logic. Jonathan's company was expanding. New ventures in renewable technology, an ambitious software suite for international governments, and an ongoing quest to break into artificial intelligence required endless hours. But her reassurance faltered when she spotted a text on Jonathan's phone one morning, an unfamiliar woman's name, Bella, with an affectionate heart emoji trailing the message. She didn't confront him immediately. Instead, she quietly mulled over the possibility that it might be a misunderstanding. Perhaps Bella was just a colleague, using a playful tone. The next day, she decided to drop by his office unannounced. Jonathan was in the middle of a conference call, so she lingered outside, exchanging polite nods with his executive assistant, Fiona. 15 minutes later, he emerged from the conference room, his face etched with worry. "Rachel, "What are you doing here?" he asked, barely feigning a cordial smile. "I was in the area and thought I'd surprise you for lunch," she said, noticing the beads of sweat forming on his temple. Something about his reaction made her stomach churn. Before she could press further, he brushed off her attempt. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Today is insane. I've got back-to-back meetings and I'm running on fumes." She forced a smile, feeling dismissed. On her way out, Rachel caught a glimpse of a woman stepping into another corridor. She wore a fitted black suit and had chestnut brown hair cascading down her back. Their eyes met, and for a second, Rachel felt a peculiar sense of recognition. Could this be Bella? That evening, Rachel summoned the courage to ask Jonathan about Bella. He hesitated, putting down his phone a bit too slowly. "Bella Carter. She's a new consultant," he explained. "We brought her on for the alternative energy project. She's brilliant, previously worked with Tesla and a few top firms. We're lucky to have her." Rachel's question hung in the air. "Why the heart emoji?" Jonathan sighed, stepping toward her. "She's just a friendly person, maybe overly so. You know how some people are with emojis. It doesn't mean anything." Rachel wanted to believe him, but she also sensed an emotional distance, a shift in their dynamic that she couldn't fully articulate. Jonathan's once earnest eyes appeared guarded, as if he was hiding something he feared might explode their carefully built world. Over the next several weeks, small indications kept piling up: a changed passcode on his phone, a reluctance to talk about how he spent his after-work hours, and a suspicious change in his routine. He began frequenting a luxury condo in downtown Boston, claiming it was an investment property he was renovating to flip for profit. Loneliness gnawed at Rachel in the sprawling penthouse. She turned to her journal, scribbling down every half-truth and red flag that pricked at her mind. Was it possible she was just paranoid? After all, she was the one with the ring on her finger, the one who publicly bore his last name. Late one night, as Rachel paced the living room, the phone rang. She froze, noticing the time, nearly midnight. She answered tentatively, and a woman's voice crackled through the line before quickly disconnecting. Her heart thundered. She dialed back, but there was no answer. In that moment, a sense of dread enveloped her. She knew life was about to unravel. She just didn't know how. Bella Carter was as captivating as she was ambitious, a potent mix that often led her down morally grey paths. Growing up in rural Ohio, she learned early that if she wanted to escape her mundane fate, she had to hustle hard. After a few stints at tech startups, she gained a reputation for being exceptionally persuasive. Her mentors called her the closer, referencing her uncanny ability to finalize complex contracts that others fumbled. Her career trajectory soared, but her personal life was riddled with complications. Bella's relationships always seemed to combust under the weight of her ambition. She married young at 22 to a man named Thomas Carter, a mild-mannered engineer. They divorced within 2 years, citing irreconcilable differences. In reality, Bella had outgrown him, her hunger for power outstripping his contentment with suburban life. Eventually, she found herself working at a high-profile consulting firm, rubbing shoulders with executives from Tesla, Oracle, and Boeing. That's where she first heard about Jonathan Harrington. She admired his relentless drive and philanthropic leanings from afar. When an opening appeared at Harrington Tech Innovations, Bella wasted no time maneuvering to get the consulting gig. Meeting Jonathan in person confirmed everything she had hoped for. He was charismatic, confident, and astonishingly wealthy. The chemistry between them was immediate, sparked by their shared love of innovation and disregard for limits. Late-night brainstorming sessions at the Harrington office often bled into early morning breakfasts. She could see the way Jonathan looked at her, intrigued, almost enamored. Bella's heart fluttered too. What began as professional synergy quickly mutated into a personal entanglement. The moment she sensed Jonathan's vulnerability, his frustration with an expanding empire and a marriage he hinted was stifling him, she exploited it. She'd find ways to be indispensable, encouraging him to confide in her about everything from boardroom politics to marital tension. As the lines blurred, Bella reveled in the thrill of seducing a man who lived on the razor's edge of power. The first time they kissed was after an exhausting week of negotiations with a government client. Bella had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal that put Harrington Tech Innovations in the spotlight once again. Jonathan, exhilarated, invited her to celebrate with a high-end champagne toast in his corner office. Sometime between the second and third glass, he leaned in. She hesitated only briefly before meeting his lips. She tasted guilt on his breath and ambition on hers. In the ensuing weeks, clandestine nights at posh hotels and hush-hush weekend getaways became their normal. Bella was intoxicated by the secrecy. Yet she also sensed Jonathan's lingering hesitation, fueled by a mixture of marital guilt and genuine affection for Rachel. Despite this, Bella pushed forward. She would not let conscience stand in her way, an approach that had fueled her career. Still, Bella harbored her own vulnerabilities. Although she had broken free from her past, something about her ex, Thomas Carter, still stung. They had parted ways so abruptly, with bitterness on his side and apathy on hers. Yet occasionally his memory flickered, reminding her of a time when love was simpler, devoid of big money and grand manipulations. Despite that lingering nostalgia, Bella refused to relent. Jonathan was her golden ticket to the life she'd always coveted, a life where she could thrive at the center of power. She planned meticulously, waiting for the perfect moment to ensnare Jonathan fully, ensuring that Rachel's presence in his life became obsolete. While Jonathan and Bella's affair gained momentum, Rachel remained hopeful for a renewed bond at home. She yearned for the camaraderie they once shared, those effortless nights, exchanging dreams over takeout Chinese or discussing philanthropic ventures that lit a spark in both of them. Above all, Rachel dreamed of motherhood, an aspiration she had harbored long before she met Jonathan. One crisp morning, after suspecting her period was late, she took a pregnancy test in the master bathroom. Heart pounding, she waited the agonizing 2 minutes before reading the result. A bold, positive sign stared back. A cascade of emotions swirled within her: excitement, relief, and an ever-present undercurrent of fear. She pictured Jonathan's reaction. Would he be elated or burdened by the news? Trembling with a mix of joy and nervousness, she decided to surprise him that evening. But Jonathan arrived home well past midnight, his shirt rumpled and his eyes hollow. When she broached the subject of wanting to talk, he dismissed her with a weary wave. "Not tonight, Rach. I'm exhausted. We'll talk tomorrow." Rachel spent the night tossing and turning, her hand protectively over her belly. Was this how he would greet the news that would change their lives forever? Unsure, she tried again the next day. Over breakfast coffee for him, herbal tea for her, she handed him a small box. Inside lay the pregnancy test wrapped in a silk ribbon. Jonathan's reaction was complicated. Initially, he stood motionless, scanning the test. A flicker of happiness crossed his face, followed by a palpable wave of anxiety. This is incredible," he stammered, pulling her into a gentle hug. But the warmth of his embrace cooled quickly, as if overshadowed by a secret weighing on him. Despite the tension, Rachel's news brought a short-lived revival of affection between them. Jonathan accompanied her to prenatal appointments and even gifted her a baby journal. For fleeting moments, Rachel felt hopeful. She believed the pregnancy would act like a lighthouse in a turbulent sea, guiding Jonathan back to her. Yet the undercurrents persisted. On the nights Jonathan claimed to be working late, Rachel sensed something was off. She overheard him once, talking in hushed tones on his cell, saying things like, "I need more time and don't push me." When she confronted him, he brushed it off as business stress. In her vulnerable state, Rachel chose to believe his half-truths, hoping that the baby's impending arrival would close any emotional gap. But in truth, that gap widened, fueled by Jonathan's deepening bond with Bella. For Bella's part, the pregnancy announcement ignited fierce jealousy. She saw Rachel's unborn child as a roadblock to her ultimate plan, securing Jonathan's undivided devotion. The battle lines were drawn, though Rachel had no idea the war had already begun. She sensed a tension, but believed love could conquer it. Bella, on the other hand, knew better. Jonathan was caught between the woman he had once cherished and the one who fueled his darkest desires. And for all his genius in corporate strategy, he had no blueprint for extricating himself from this personal catastrophe. Bella felt the shift the moment Rachel's pregnancy became public knowledge. Though Jonathan tried to keep it quiet, word spread within Harrington Tech Innovations. The staff whispered their congratulations, and soon the tabloids got wind of it. Rachel's glowing pictures, with a subtle baby bump, made the rounds in society columns. For Bella, every headline praising the happy couple felt like a dagger. She confronted Jonathan during a weekend rendezvous at the luxurious condo he had invested in. The place was lavishly furnished but lacked the warmth of a real home, an apt reflection of their arrangement. "What's your plan?" Bella asked, her voice taut as she lounged on a velvet sofa. "We can't keep sneaking around like this. It's unsustainable. Don't you feel guilty?" Jonathan rubbed his temples, his patience frayed. "Yes, I do. But do you realize the magnitude of what's at stake? There's a child involved now." Bella rose, stepping toward him. "Exactly, and I won't be shoved aside." She fixed him with a piercing gaze. "I'm not going to be your dirty little secret." They argued for an hour, each retort sharper than the last. Finally, Bella delivered her ultimatum. She demanded that Jonathan choose. Once and for all, either end his marriage or she would walk away. Caught off guard, Jonathan struggled. He admitted he still had love for Rachel, complicated though it was, but his bond with Bella felt impossible to sever. He promised Bella that he had a plan, though he wasn't sure what that plan looked like. "Give me until the baby is born," he pleaded. "After that, I'll figure out a way to do this cleanly." Bella eyed him with skepticism. "You expect me to just wait?" Jonathan ran a hand through his hair. "Trust me. I've got attorneys, PR teams. We can manage a quiet divorce that won't cause a tabloid frenzy." Bella didn't respond immediately. She needed more than Jonathan's vague promises. She wanted reassurance that she wasn't a mere fling. In a moment of calculated bravado, she whispered, "Prove it. Name the baby after someone I choose, just the middle name at least." "Show me I matter." The request stunned Jonathan. "You want me to rename my child for you?" Bella nodded, a faint, almost twisted smile curving her lips. "Rachel's pregnant, but you're still the father. Our relationship should count for something." Jonathan laughed uneasily, but Bella remained unyielding. He realized that despite the absurdity, he might agree just to keep her placated. If Rachel questioned the name, he could spin it as an homage to a mentor or friend, someone from his youth. Little did he know Bella already had a specific name in mind. Thomas, her ex-husband's first name. It was a petty, vindictive choice, but it thrilled Bella. It was her way of reaffirming that she had power over men who had once overlooked her needs. As Jonathan left the condo that day, he felt trapped. Bella's ultimatum loomed large. He told himself he'd find a way out of it, that it was just an irrational demand she would eventually forget. But Bella was not the forgetting type. Meanwhile, Rachel sensed Jonathan's restlessness, though she couldn't pinpoint its cause. He grew more distant, more consumed by unseen pressures. Unbeknownst to her, a plot was unfolding in the shadows, one that threatened the very identity of her unborn child. Months slipped by, and Rachel's belly grew along with her anticipation. The baby's due date approached like a beacon of hope amidst swirling uncertainties. She spent hours in the nursery, meticulously choosing everything from crib sheets to soft pastel wallpapers. Jonathan, when he was around, appeared supportive but distracted, lost in a maze of business calls and cryptic text messages. Rachel's parents, Scott and Linda Moore, occasionally visited, noticing the strain in their daughter's eyes. Over cups of chamomile tea, Linda voiced her concerns. "Is everything okay between you two?" she asked gently. Rachel tried to smile, insisting Jonathan's workload was enormous, but her mother's knowing glance suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Soon after, Rachel noticed something odd. Jonathan had begun suggesting unusual baby names, none of which they had previously discussed. The most perplexing of all was Thomas. Thomas? Rachel raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't on our shortlist. Didn't we agree on names like Alexander, Lucas, or even Jacob?" He shrugged. "It's just an idea. Thomas Harrington has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Thought it might be a tribute to a family friend." She frowned, trying to recall any friend named Thomas who had loomed large enough in Jonathan's life to warrant this tribute. As far as she knew, there wasn't one. When she pressed for details, Jonathan became evasive, mumbling something about an old mentor in his early startup days. The explanation felt hollow. One evening, while Jonathan was showering, Rachel noticed his phone buzzing incessantly. The screen flashed with multiple texts from Bella. Her heart pounded as she read the messages. "When are you telling her? Don't keep me waiting. You promised me." A jolt of nausea hit Rachel. Her suspicions coalesced into certainty. Jonathan was having an affair with Bella Carter, the consultant she'd once encountered at his office. She closed her eyes, clinging to the final threads of denial. Maybe the texts were about business, but the words dripped with personal tension. When Jonathan emerged from the bathroom, Rachel confronted him, phone in hand. He froze, his face draining of color. "Rachel, I can explain," he began, but she didn't let him finish. "Just tell me the truth," she demanded, her voice trembling. "Who is Bella Carter, really?" Caught in his lies, Jonathan confessed to a relationship that started as a fling. He attempted to frame it as meaningless, a lapse in judgment. But as Rachel pried deeper, she discovered that Bella had become more than just a fling. She was a fixture in Jonathan's life, someone he couldn't shake. Her world crumbled. The man she loved, the father of her child, had betrayed her. Tears streaming down her face, Rachel felt a mixture of fury and heartbreak. She had sacrificed so much, her own career, her dreams, her unwavering devotion, and now she was left with a fractured marriage and a baby on the way. When Jonathan tried to console her, she pushed him away, the ring on her finger suddenly feeling like a weight around her heart. He vowed to end things with Bella, to focus on his family. But Rachel wasn't sure she could ever trust him again. In the days that followed, tension simmered in their home. Rachel contemplated leaving, but the baby's imminent arrival complicated everything. She could barely sleep, haunted by the texts and the lies. The name Thomas now carried an eerie significance she didn't yet understand. Soon, all would unravel in spectacular fashion on a stage far bigger than she ever imagined. As Jonathan wrestled with his moral quagmire, another figure quietly stepped onto the stage, Thomas Carter, Bella's ex-husband. Unlike Bella, who thrived in the limelight, Thomas maintained a low profile. He was an accomplished mechanical engineer now residing in Seattle, far removed from Boston's high society drama. Yet news travels in strange ways. Through a series of professional overlaps, mutual acquaintances in the tech world, Thomas heard rumors about Bella's involvement with a high-profile millionaire in Massachusetts. Out of curiosity and perhaps some residual attachment, he started digging. Online forums, LinkedIn connections, and gossip from industry events revealed the name Jonathan Harrington. At first, Thomas shook his head, almost amused. Bella had always set her sights high, and Harrington Tech Innovations was a behemoth. But the more he learned, the more concerned he grew. Whispers suggested Bella was entwined not just with Jonathan, but also meddling in his marriage, even influencing decisions about his unborn child. Thomas recalled Bella's vindictive streak. If she was manipulating Jonathan, it wouldn't be long before she escalated the situation. Despite their acrimonious split, Thomas still felt some responsibility. He had once loved Bella deeply, and the thought of her wreaking havoc on an unsuspecting family troubled him. One evening, fueled by curiosity and an unresolved urge to protect, he reached out to Rachel Harrington via a discreet email. He'd gleaned her work address from an old press release about a charity event. In the email, Thomas introduced himself vaguely as a past acquaintance of Bella's, expressing concern about Bella's destructive patterns. He didn't mention his name in full, fearing Bella would retaliate if she discovered his intrusion. Rachel, initially skeptical, responded cautiously. Over a series of encrypted messages, Thomas warned her that Bella was adept at manipulation and had a penchant for revenge. Though he didn't know the specifics, he urged Rachel to tread carefully. Receiving these emails rocked Rachel's sense of reality. She was reeling from Jonathan's betrayal, and now an unidentified figure warned her of Bella's danger. Something about the tone felt sincere. There was no extortion or scandalous detail, just a note of caution, like a lifeline offered from the shadows. Before Rachel could decide what to do, an opportunity arose that would soon catapult her personal turmoil into a public frenzy. A popular daytime talk show, The Heart's Truth, hosted by the no-nonsense journalist Veronica Blake, extended an invitation. They wanted to feature Rachel and Jonathan in a segment on philanthropy, parenthood, and power couples. Jonathan was wary, but Rachel sensed a chance to reclaim her narrative. Perhaps she could confront the rumors publicly, force her husband to face his actions under the glare of television lights. In a surge of determination, she accepted the invitation on both their behalves, setting the stage for what would become one of the most explosive broadcasts of the year. The days leading up to the live taping of The Heart's Truth felt surreal. Rachel, now 8 months pregnant, oscillated between anxiety and resolve. She had confronted Jonathan about the email exchange, but withheld Thomas's identity. Jonathan denied any knowledge of who might be behind it, growing visibly agitated whenever Bella's name surfaced. Meanwhile, Bella seethed. She discovered Rachel and Jonathan's forthcoming TV appearance and viewed it as a charade, a desperate attempt by Jonathan to salvage his public image. She left him enraged voicemails, demanding an explanation, threatening to crash the broadcast if he didn't honor his promises. Unbeknownst to Bella, Jonathan was already having second thoughts about the entire affair. He realized how precarious his position had become. Though he had once considered leaving Rachel, the impending child awakened paternal instincts he never knew he possessed. He felt compelled to protect Rachel from Bella's looming threats, even as guilt ate away at him. Veronica Blake, the show's host, was a veteran journalist who didn't shy away from scandal. Her producers sensed a ratings bonanza in featuring the Harringtons, a glamorous couple, at the top of the social ladder. The plan was to delve into their charitable work, the upcoming baby, and the secrets to maintaining a powerful marriage. Rachel found the irony almost comical. On the night before the taping, Rachel tried to get some rest, but her mind was a whirlwind of dread and curiosity. She clung to one last shred of hope that Jonathan would see reason, maybe even come clean publicly about Bella. But she also knew the talk show was an opportunity for her own confession, should she choose to reveal the affair and the suspicious baby name push. If she did, the media storm would be cataclysmic. Jonathan, in his study, pored over legal documents prepared by his PR team. They planned to spin any negative questions, but he knew controlling the narrative with Veronica Blake was next to impossible. He considered cancelling, but the producers had already teased the episode, and backing out now would intensify public speculation. As dawn broke, neither Jonathan nor Rachel had slept much. They exchanged few words while dressing for the show in the pale morning light. Rachel chose a flowing emerald green maternity gown that accentuated her belly, symbolizing her strength and impending motherhood. Jonathan donned a tailored navy suit but looked uncharacteristically disheveled. Just before they left, Rachel paused by the nursery, resting a hand on her abdomen. "You deserve the truth," she whispered to her unborn baby, "and I'll make sure you get it." Little did she know that the truth was about to erupt in ways none of them could have predicted. The Heart's Truth was filmed before a studio audience of nearly 200, with millions more watching at home. As Rachel and Jonathan settled onto the plush chairs under the glaring studio lights, they exchanged anxious glances. Veronica Blake, poised with her trademark elegance, welcomed viewers with a warm yet slightly mischievous smile. "Good morning, everyone. Today, we have one of Boston's most influential couples, the visionary tech mogul Jonathan Harrington and his wife, Rachel. They're here to talk about business, philanthropy, and their exciting new chapter as parents." Rachel forced a smile, hands clasped protectively over her belly. Jonathan straightened his tie, his jaw tense. The first few questions were benign about how they met, their shared philanthropic endeavors, and the joys of preparing for a child. Rachel relaxed slightly, grateful for the soft start. Jonathan recounted charming anecdotes of philanthropic galas, while Rachel highlighted her volunteer work. But Veronica Blake was known for her incisive questioning. Halfway through the segment, she pivoted. "Let's talk about family dynamics. There are rumors your marriage has faced some challenges recently. Care to comment?" Jonathan's eyes flickered. He mustered a diplomatic answer, citing the pressures of running a global company. Rachel nodded in agreement, though her heart pounded. She debated whether to seize the moment. Veronica continued, "Jonathan, you've been in the headlines not just for your tech innovations, but also for a rumored connection with a new consultant at your firm, Bella Carter. Any truth to that?" The air in the studio turned electric. Jonathan cleared his throat, preparing to deny or deflect, but before he could utter a word, Rachel felt a surge of fierce resolve. She gripped the microphone. "I think it's time our audience knows the truth," she said, her voice trembling but determined. The audience collectively inhaled, sensing a bombshell. Even Veronica Blake raised her eyebrows, momentarily caught off guard. Rachel turned to Jonathan, tears glistening in her eyes. "You owe it to our child to stop this charade. Tell them about Bella." Gasps echoed across the studio. Jonathan's face paled, and for a moment he appeared frozen. Then he stammered, "Yes, Bella Carter and I, we had a relationship, which I've ended." The audience erupted in murmurs, a swirl of shock and schadenfreude. Veronica leaned forward, pressing, "So you admit to an affair?" Jonathan nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, it was a mistake. I regret it." Rachel inhaled deeply, tears now streaming. "But that's not all," she continued, raising her voice to quell the audience chatter. "He wanted to name our baby after another man, someone from Bella's past." A hush fell again. The camera zoomed in, capturing every quiver in Rachel's voice. Jonathan tried to protest. "I never agreed to it fully. It was just an idea." Rachel cut him off. "Stop lying. Bella asked you to name our baby after her ex-husband, Thomas Carter, and you didn't refuse." Now the crowd roiled with disapproval, and Veronica looked stunned. "Wait, you wanted to name your baby after your mistress's ex-husband?" she asked, staring incredulously at Jonathan. Caught on live television, Jonathan hung his head. "I was under pressure. I never really intended." But the final blow was yet to come. Rachel cleared her throat, her voice thick with emotion. "That's still not the whole truth," she said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "This is a DNA test. I had it done secretly because I needed to know if this baby was actually Jonathan's." The audience gasped louder than ever. Veronica placed a hand over her chest, struggling to maintain composure. Even Jonathan appeared rattled. He sputtered, "What are you talking about?" "Of course the baby is mine." Rachel's next words silenced the entire studio. I wasn't so sure, but now I am. According to this DNA test, the baby is yours, Jonathan, fully and unequivocally. A wave of relief flickered across Jonathan's face briefly. Rachel's expression remained stony. It means you betrayed me, jeopardized our family, and humiliated me for no reason. All for a woman who manipulated you into a grotesque request to name our baby after her ex. In that charged moment, Rachel rose from her seat, tears and fury in her eyes. She looked at the camera, addressing millions of viewers. I'm done being silent. My child deserves better. Pandemonium erupted as the show cut to commercial. Staffers rushed onto the stage trying to maintain order. Veronica Blake, for once, was speechless, and somewhere in the stunned audience a lone figure, Thomas Carter himself, quietly slipped out. He had come to witness the spectacle in person, uncertain whether to intervene. What he saw was more than enough to confirm that Bella's web of manipulation had ensnared more than just one unsuspecting soul. The clip from The Heart's Truth spread like wildfire, dominating social media feeds and news channels. Within hours, hashtags like #HarringtonScandal and #MistressNameGate began trending nationwide. The scandal sparked furious debates on everything from marital fidelity to wealth-induced hubris. Reporters camped outside the Harrington penthouse, hoping for a statement or a glimpse of the disgraced couple. Rachel, her belly now heavy with the near-term baby, shut herself away, fielding calls from worried family members and outraged friends. Jonathan, haunted by the humiliation, spent nights holed up in the condo once reserved for Bella, trying to handle the PR crisis from a distance. Bella found herself under siege as well. Tabloids dug into her past, unearthing details of her divorce from Thomas, her prior liaisons, and even her ambition-driven career moves. Her face appeared on the covers of gossip magazines under headlines like "The Most Notorious Mistress in America." She received hate mail and online threats, prompting her to withdraw from public view. Despite everything, she reached out to Jonathan, demanding he clarify that she hadn't coerced him. He ignored her calls, fueling her rage. Thomas Carter, meanwhile, watched the frenzy from a safe distance. He felt a strange mix of pity for Rachel and anger at Bella. Though he had cautioned Rachel indirectly, seeing the scandal unfold on national television still shocked him. In a moment of compassion, he sent a discreet note to Rachel's personal email, offering words of encouragement. She thanked him, though she never asked for more details about his history with Bella. Amid the chaos, Rachel wrestled with heartbreak. The DNA results confirmed Jonathan's paternity, which offered some solace, but her trust in him lay in tatters. She consulted a high-profile divorce attorney recommended by a friend, but a messy divorce in the late stages of pregnancy felt too overwhelming. For the moment, she decided to focus on protecting her child's future. Meanwhile, Jonathan's board of directors, alarmed by the negative press, questioned his fitness to remain CEO. Stocks in Harrington Tech Innovations dipped, shaking investor confidence. A crisis management firm was hired, releasing a statement that Jonathan had temporarily stepped back from day-to-day operations to address personal matters. In an attempt to salvage some dignity, Jonathan tried to see Rachel, bearing apologies and pleas for another chance. He brought flowers, offered financial security for the baby, anything to show remorse. Rachel refused to speak to him, instructing security to deny his entry. Her heartbreak was too raw, the betrayal too fresh. She spent her days preparing for childbirth, supported by close friends and her mother, Linda, who flew in to help. As the weeks inched closer to her due date, Rachel realized she had decisions to make. Would she raise the baby on her own, forging a new path free from Jonathan's influence? Or should she attempt to reconcile, if only to provide a united front for the child? The scandal had obliterated her illusions, but it had also freed her from a life overshadowed by half-truths and hidden affairs. Little did anyone suspect the drama was far from over. Bella, feeling cornered and vindictive, had one final card to play, a move that would thrust all parties into an even harsher spotlight. Bella Carter refused to fade into obscurity. In her mind, Jonathan had betrayed their agreement by not defending her publicly, leaving her exposed as the sole villain in a sordid affair. She felt cheated, humiliated, and dangerously angry. Armed with her own legal counsel, Bella plotted a counter-narrative. If Jonathan was going to leave her to the wolves, she would ensure he paid dearly. She reached out to a notorious tabloid journalist named Brent Flannery, known for sensational exposes. Bella promised him exclusive access to her private communications with Jonathan, emails, text messages, even voice recordings. In a dramatic press conference organized by Bella's attorney, she stood behind a podium, flashbulbs flickering across her face. "I will not be scapegoated," she declared, her voice unwavering. She insisted Jonathan had pursued her just as aggressively as she had pursued him, framing their relationship as a mutual, passionate affair. More importantly, she confirmed the rumor about the baby name that Jonathan had entertained the idea of naming his child Thomas, though she stopped short of admitting why that name mattered. The revelation caused another seismic wave in the media. Bella released carefully curated snippets of texts showing Jonathan praising her work ethic and professing his confusion about his marriage. While these weren't as damning as she hoped, they painted a picture of a man who was at least half responsible for their liaison. For Rachel, watching Bella's performance on live television felt like pouring salt on an open wound. She had already endured public humiliation, and now Bella was twisting the knife, insisting Jonathan was equally to blame, and by implication, that the Harrington marriage was a sham long before Bella entered the picture. Jonathan's legal team scrambled to contain the fallout. He considered filing an injunction to stop Bella from releasing more personal data, but his advisors cautioned that it could appear he was suppressing the truth. In a rare moment of introspection, Jonathan realized that any further attempts to fight Bella publicly would only fan the flames. Yet behind the scenes, Bella was preparing her most explosive revelation. She intended to produce an incriminating recording that caught Jonathan referencing renaming the baby "if it keeps you happy," along with remarks denigrating Rachel's predictable nature. Bella believed the recording would confirm the emotional cruelty of Jonathan's betrayal, painting her not as a seducer, but as a woman who fell victim to an older, more powerful man's manipulation. As Bella plotted this final move, the Harrington scandal continued to splinter. Investors panicked over the growing negative publicity. Rachel, on the cusp of giving birth, felt her mental health deteriorating. She could scarcely keep up with the barrage of articles, interviews, and social media diatribes. In her darkest moments, Rachel found herself replaying those early memories, how Jonathan once gave his coat to a freezing event staffer, how he had gazed at her in Paris, enveloping her in a whirlwind of love. Where had that man gone? She mourned the loss of what once seemed an unbreakable bond. While Bella and Jonathan weaponized press releases and recordings, Rachel huddled in the nursery, letting tears roll down her cheeks. Each day brought her closer to motherhood, a role she both yearned for and feared. She vowed that whatever happened next, she would fiercely protect her child from the toxic swirl of secrets and revenge. And she wouldn't have to wait long. Childbirth, like an unstoppable tide, was coming. And with it, a new life that would demand real decisions and real sacrifices from all involved. In the early hours of a stormy April morning, Rachel's contractions began. She was alone, with only her mother Linda sleeping in a guest room. The howling wind outside seemed to mirror her internal turmoil. Clutching her hospital bag, Rachel woke Linda and rushed to the hospital, her heart pounding with both anticipation and anxiety. Labor proved arduous and long. Waves of pain crashed over her, each contraction a reminder of the uncertain life awaiting her child. Linda held her hand, whispering words of encouragement. The medical staff offered reassurance, but Rachel felt the absence of a father who should have been by her side. Word reached Jonathan through a mutual friend that Rachel was in labor. Guilt and concern flooded him. He raced to the hospital, ignoring Rachel's explicit request that he stay away. Upon arrival, he found Linda pacing the corridor. She glared at him, arms crossed. "You have some nerve showing up here," she spat, her voice trembling with anger. Jonathan tried to explain himself, to express how much he cared, but Linda shook her head. "If Rachel wants you in there, she'll let me know." For hours, Jonathan waited outside the maternity ward, hearing distant cries and beeping monitors. Each minute felt like an eternity, with staff coming and going. Finally, after nearly 15 hours of labor, Linda emerged, her eyes weary yet filled with relief. "It's a boy," she said softly. "Rachel is exhausted, but she's okay." Jonathan exhaled a breath. He didn't know he was holding. Tears gathered in his eyes. "Can I see her, the baby?" Linda hesitated, then gestured to the door. "I'll ask her." In the dimly lit hospital room, Rachel lay cradling a tiny, swaddled infant in her arms. Her face glistened with sweat and tears, an expression of profound love mixed with heartbreak. When Linda murmured that Jonathan was waiting, Rachel paused. Her heart warred between resentment and a small flicker of compassion for the man who was, after all, the child's father. After a moment, she nodded. Jonathan stepped inside, his footsteps tentative. He stopped at the foot of the bed, overcome by the sight of his newborn son. The baby's cheeks were flushed pink, eyes tightly closed, a tuft of dark hair peeking from beneath the hospital blanket. "Tearfully," Jonathan whispered, "He's beautiful, Rachel." She nodded, tears slipping down her face. "He is," she agreed softly. For a fleeting moment, a fragile peace enveloped the room. Jonathan extended his arms, silently asking for permission to hold the child. Rachel hesitated, but then relinquished the baby to him. Cradling his son, Jonathan's entire being shook with a rush of love and regret. What's his name?" Jonathan asked, looking at Rachel with trepidation. Rachel drew a shaky breath. "I'm naming him Oliver Michael Harrington," she replied, ignoring Jonathan's earlier suggestions. Jonathan nodded, relief evident. The dreaded Thomas was out of the question. Gently, he leaned down to kiss Oliver's forehead. "Welcome to the world, Oliver," he whispered. Outside the hospital windows, the storm had subsided, leaving puddles and a hushed calm in its wake. Inside, mother and father found themselves at a crossroads, united by a child, but divided by betrayal. Though the baby's arrival brought a brief moment of serenity, the swirling scandal was far from over. Bella's final strike loomed, and the global media had yet to move on. But in that quiet hospital room, a tiny new life offered a glimmer of hope if they dared to seize it. A week after Oliver's birth, Rachel was discharged and settled into a secluded townhouse in the suburbs of Boston, far from the penthouse that had become a media circus. Linda moved in temporarily to help. Jonathan visited sporadically, tiptoeing around the silent tension between them. He hoped the joy of fatherhood might soften Rachel's stance, but she remained aloof. Unbeknownst to both, Bella was orchestrating a culminating blow. Through her connections at Brent Flannery's tabloid, she leaked an audio file, Jonathan's recorded voicemail messages, peppered with confessions of love and musings about renaming the baby. In the most damaging snippet, Jonathan grumbled about Rachel's traditional mindset and admitted he was willing to consider Bella's wishes to avoid losing her. The clip went viral overnight, reigniting public uproar. Even those who had begun to sympathize with Jonathan after the live TV debacle now viewed him as a manipulative husband. Social media platforms boiled with outrage, attacking him for toying with the identity of an unborn child. Cancel Harrington trended nationwide. Rachel learned of the leak from a tearful phone call by a friend who had heard the audio. Though nothing in it was new to Rachel, hearing Jonathan's voice discuss such intimate betrayals in a casual, callous tone devastated her. She smashed her phone in a surge of anger, the fragile postpartum emotions flaring like an inferno. Sensing the severity of the damage, Jonathan hastily arranged a press conference where he publicly admitted his wrongdoing, apologized to Rachel and Oliver, and pledged financial restitution if Rachel chose to separate. He ended the conference by announcing his permanent resignation as CEO of Harrington Tech Innovations, ceding control to the board and citing a need to focus on his family. It was a dramatic fall from grace for a man once hailed as an industry titan, but for Rachel, the gesture felt too little, too late. While she recognized the guilt behind Jonathan's actions, the pain remained raw. She instructed her lawyers to draft divorce papers, ensuring Oliver's financial security, but making it clear she wanted sole custody. Bella, in her twisted sense of accomplishment, thought she had triumphed. She had forced Jonathan to his knees publicly, yet the victory rang hollow. She remained unemployed, blacklisted from several consulting firms that wanted nothing to do with her radioactive reputation. Paparazzi hounded her, capturing her every move in unflattering angles. Thomas, her ex, refused any form of contact. In the end, Bella discovered that wrecking other people's lives didn't bring lasting satisfaction, only a brief moment of revenge. Alone and friendless, she contemplated leaving Boston to start anew, recognizing that her name had become synonymous with betrayal. Back in the quiet suburban townhouse, Rachel faced a new reality, motherhood overshadowed by scandal. She gazed at Oliver, his tiny fingers wrapped around her own. In his innocent eyes, she saw a future untainted by the sins of his parents. Could she forgive Jonathan enough to let him share in Oliver's upbringing? She didn't know. But one thing was certain: she was done being a victim. Whatever lay ahead, she would stand on her own terms, with her son as her guiding light. Months after Oliver's birth, Rachel filed for divorce, seeking sole custody but allowing Jonathan visitation rights. Free from his CEO duties, Jonathan poured his time into fatherhood, hoping to redeem himself. Meanwhile, Bella vanished from Boston's high society, rumored to be rebuilding her life under an assumed name. In the quiet of her new suburban townhouse, Rachel found unexpected strength in caring for Oliver. Late nights brought reflections on her shattered marriage, yet she began shaping a future that was truly her own. She resumed freelance marketing, determined to stand on her own 2 feet. During visits at a local family center, Rachel witnessed Jonathan's genuine affection for their son. Though their trust remained broken, a fragile peace emerged for Oliver's sake. In time, gossip columns moved on, leaving Rachel the clarity to see that she and Oliver could flourish without Jonathan's fortune or fame. With her son in her arms, she embraced a life built on resilience and self-worth, finally closing the door on a story defined by betrayal. If this story struck a chord, it's because truth often unravels the best laid illusions, no matter how deep the pockets or how cunning the lies. Jonathan Harrington's fall from grace isn't just a cautionary tale for the wealthy and powerful, but for anyone who stood at a moral crossroads. Rachel's resilience reveals the indomitable power of a mother protecting her child. And Bella's downfall reminds us that revenge rarely soothes a wounded heart. In the end, the essence of this tale lies in the human capacity for survival. When all the headlines fade, what remains is the steadfast love between a parent and child and the possibility of a fresh start. If you found yourself glued to this roller coaster of drama, betrayal, and redemption, do share your thoughts below. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more riveting stories that remind us how fragile and precious our truths can be.